Every time I think of the Rosary, I always think of my mum. And we grew up in a small, poor little farm in County Fermanagh in the 40s and the 50s. And I was a member of 13 children in a tiny little thatched cabin, really. And every night, of course, we said the Rosary. And my mother always gave out the Rosary and all the trimmings of the Rosary. And she always said the litany. And it's a source of great joy and amusement in our family, this story, that when any of the kids misbehaved, not me, of course, the other kids, my mother would be interrupted. And then, because she was reciting it from memory, she would have to start at the beginning and have a good run at it, because if you interrupted her, she couldn't pick it up. By the way, interestingly enough, I just read today that there's a new book out on the Rosary by a most surprising source, Gary Wills. I mean, the Gary Wills. And amazingly, it has a blur on it from William Buckley, saying that it's a profound study and a beautifully written spiritual meditation on the Rosary. Now, some of you may not know Gary Wills. He's a very famous writer and essayist, would be highly critical of the church, of course. But it's interesting that he has produced a book on the Rosary. Now, for the heathens among you, and I'm sure there are no heathens, this is a map of Ireland. And this little red line here represents Northern Ireland. And here, of course, is the finest county in all of Ireland, Fermanagh. It's well known that this was St. Patrick's favourite county, of course. So, before 1920, that line never existed in all of the centuries. Never existed culturally, historically, economically, didn't simply feature. And all of the island was under the control of Her Majesty's government, over here somewhere. And the centre of British administration in Ireland was not Belfast, but right here in Dublin. So in 1920, there was yet another, but this time fairly successful Irish Revolution. And the British began to realize that the old game in Ireland was up. They knew they could no longer hold all of the island of Ireland, as they had done for centuries. But they didn't want to quit. They didn't want to leave Ireland for strategic, political, economic, all sorts of reasons. So here's what they did. Abracadabra, without any consultation, without any poll or voting, they said, hey, we're going to create a new entity and we'll call it Northern Ireland. It's also sometimes called Ulster, but you see, the British not only divided Ireland, partitioned it, they divided Ulster, because Ulster includes this part, the most northern part of Ireland. Ironically, it's in southern Ireland, the most northern part of Ireland. And then Cavan and Monaghan. So they excluded those three counties for one very simple reason. If they included those three counties, they would not have an inbuilt permanent majority here of pro-British people who happen to be Protestants. And they needed that for a twofold reason: to continue a British stronghold on the island of Ireland, and to establish their friends, the Unionists, the Protestants, in a permanent position of supremacy. And at that time, there were 2/3 Protestant, pro-British people, and only 1/3 Catholics in that artificially created part of Ireland. And that is the basis still today of the problem in Northern Ireland. Not only was Ireland's right to national self-determination and democracy, not only was that violated and partitioned and desecrated, but the means by which it was maintained was through sectarianism, discrimination, and a brutal police force. The Catholics were the second-class citizens and meant to be in a permanent substrata. Now, moving ahead very quickly, a lot has changed, thank God, and I greatly welcome that. The British have no longer, I don't think, any strategic or financial or other interest to be in Ireland. And they want to get out, sort of. But the commitment to Protestant supremacy and unionist domination has not changed. So, for example, it may have been fairly easy for the federal government at one stage to change their position on black rights down south. Governments can change on a dime, really. But what about their followers, whom they had told were to be permanently in a position of dominance? It's hard for them to change. And even when George Wallace finally changed, did that automatically mean that the people that he had fooled and demagogued and deceived and agitated and excited, do you think they changed just like that? Well, to some degree, the problem is the same in Northern Ireland. While the British know their old game is up, the Protestants, unfortunately, have not changed too much. Now, I'm not talking about every single Protestant or individual Protestants. I'm talking about the culture and the attitude and the political system. And although we have a peace process today, and while many things have changed, one thing that has not changed is the hardcore anti-Catholicism in Northern Ireland. That, unfortunately, has not changed. For the British, and they were like this wherever they went, it was all about power. You know, divide the masses, exploit differences, whatever will help rule, use it. You know, recruit the natives when it suits them, destroy them when it doesn't. But I mean, that was colonialism all over the world, including their attitude in this country before your revolution. Now, today, for example, and for the past 25 years, the biggest vote catcher in Northern Ireland is Ian Paisley, the Reverend Ian Paisley, Dr. Ian Paisley. His doctorate was given to him by Bob Jones University down south and another university someplace in Illinois that pumps and churns out anti-Catholic bigotry.